Fuck them Cowboys! Yeah! Never lose sight of the magic of this football team. Yeah! Here we go!
I'm all in.
If you're here, you're in the right place. Welcome back to another live stream of Cowboys Gameplan. I'm Slater, that's Mike, and man, what a wild NFL divisional weekend / a little bit of college football playoffs last night. It's been some really good playoff football this past year. It's been definitely one of a more memorable year than in past years. This has definitely been something that's been fun, but Mike, kind of just give the fans a vibe, like kind of a vibe check. I mean, do you agree with this playoff?
Yeah, man. I think we got spoiled this year for sure. I mean, most of these games came right down to the last 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. I mean, the Jaguars-Bills game, the Bills-Broncos game was a banger. We'll get to the Texans and the Patriots, but we know how that went. But it started out like it was going to be a good game. The Rams and the Bears was another phenomenal game that everybody got to watch and enjoy. And that's on top of last weekend, which almost every game was epic. And finally last night with the college football national title game, that was another really, really good game. If you're watching it from a perspective of a scouting or even as a fan, you had to have enjoyed what you were seeing on the field, both analytically and just, with your eyes watching it for the fun of it. A lot of good players out there, a lot of talent that's going to be coming into the league. We'll be talking about that as we move forward, but absolutely fun. Had a blast, been having a blast the past couple weeks, despite Dallas not being in the playoffs. It's been really, really fun to watch. You look at this Broncos-Bills game, and at the end of the day, when you have 5 or 6 championship games and you lose, something's going to have to change, even if it's not really needed. You have Josh Allen there. He's an excellent quarterback. He's a hell of an athlete. He drives that team. He's the heart of the team. And I personally just don't think he has enough weapons to get over the hump. But as everybody knows, McDermott's been a casualty of that this year and has been released, and they're moving on from him and going to be getting a new head coach there. I don't know how you feel about that. Is that something you agree with? Do you think that was the right thing to do? Do you think it's a personnel issue, or do you think it was a coaching issue with Josh Allen?
Man, at the end of the day, you can't turn the ball over the amount of times they've done it. And, of course, in any kind of NFL team, any kind of NFL franchise, anything like that, unfortunately, the head coach is always the scapegoat, right? When you look at, an owner and GM standpoint, are they really going to get rid of Josh Allen? Are you going to say, Josh Allen, you turned the ball over 3 times today, you're gone, we're trading you? No. Right. Sean McDermott did a great job in Buffalo. I think he's done one of the best jobs in Buffalo probably ever, right? Outside of the 90s Buffalo teams that couldn't, get across the finish line. So maybe is the franchise cursed? I don't know. But there comes a point, and kind of we experienced something similar where it just comes to a dead end, right? The Dallas Cowboys, 12-5, 12-5 seasons with Mike McCarthy. Even though you were having such success and you had a down year, it was time to move on. Like, everything hits a peak, right? Sure. Same thing here with Buffalo. Everything in Buffalo, they have all the success, all of the downfalls, all the, the climbs of saying this is our year, this is going to be it. We finally have all the pieces. Something's got to give. And maybe it's, having a offensive-minded head coach who can kind of control the game better with his play calling. Or maybe it's, having to go get a number 1 wide receiver for Josh Allen. Or maybe it's, really going to rebuild this roster around Josh Allen to finally make it a super team. Instead of, hey, Josh Allen, be our Superman, let's make you, Clark Kent, and we'll put a super team around you.
So do you think that's what it was? Is just the front office, the GMs, everybody looking at this and looking at Coach McDermott and saying he's a defensive-minded coach with an offensively driven team. I mean, that's where the power is, right?
Yeah.
You think they just look at this and be like, okay, you just keep getting outsmarted by these offensive minds. So due to that, and due to the current, situation with us losing again, that was their reason to justify moving on.
I don't know if it's necessarily like you're getting out coached by offensive minded coaches. I just think because of all the losing and like you're just maybe bringing in some fresh eyes on this team, maybe bringing a fresh perspective on this team, maybe trying to not just let's keep running it back. Let's try this thing one more time. It's like the cycle of insanity, and
Right.
us as Dallas fans, we know what that is because it feels like we live it every year. But
Yeah.
like I feel like that's where Buffalo's at. Like it's like, you know what? Let's just take a chance. We know Josh Allen is Superman. I think any head coach can work good with Josh Allen, but can we find somebody? Maybe they're looking for another defensive head coach. I would assume that they're looking for an offensive minded head coach, someone who can really kind of be like a Ben Johnson for Josh Allen and kind of really build an offense instead of, being super good on defense. Let's have a super good offense. Yeah, it can be a little bit more balanced there.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe they're going to switch this to an offensive mode. We tried to build a defense and we used our, all pro top of the league quarterback with a few offensive pieces. And we've pushed this thing higher than expectations every time. And it's just not cutting it. So let's reload the clip with the offense, add some more talent into the pool, bring in someone who's offensive minded to help support Josh Allen and the new personnel and see if we can do this thing again. It'll be interesting to see who they go after. Coaches are starting to get picked off a little bit by a little bit, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see who ends up taking over there in Buffalo.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, fire away.
Before we get into, kind of the coaching cycle, because we're going to kind of put a twist on today's live stream here. We're going to do some NFL playoff talk, right? And then we'll kind of get into the NFL coaching perspective and then into our own DC perspective. So let me kind of kick it off to you here. Let's do, if I click the right thing here. Well, one more time. There we go. If we do CJ Stroud, okay, let's think about the Texans season. Let's think about how phenomenal that defense was. Let's think about how everything seemed to be going their way. They put the whooping on the Steelers, even after 4 turnovers. CJ Stroud comes out again against New England and produces 4 more turnovers. Is CJ Stroud the right guy in Houston, or is it potentially in their coaching perspective? Or is it, DeMeco Ryans? Does he need someone to have an offensive mind to develop CJ Stroud? Is it the same situation there?
So this was a 28-16. I don't know what you would call this kind of a loss. You would not be able to run 80 yards down the field on this Texans defense, right?
Yeah.
All you had to do in this game was just protect the football, not turn the ball over, don't do anything stupid, pin them deep, and let the defense handle it. Do what you got to do on offense. Be as productive as you can. Take some time off the clock, kick a field goal, whatever you got to do. Just don't get in trouble, right? They lost this game 28-16. How many turnovers did you have? 5? Wasn't it like 3 picks?
Yeah.
A couple of, drops or whatever. That is insanity. It is crazy. This young man had a stellar rookie season, talk of the town, and now here we are 2 years later, and it actually looks like he is regressing, making horrible mistakes. These throws that he was making were atrocious. They were not good. Literally off target, not the right reads, throwing caution to the wind. It was really, really bad. So my question, and also in conjunction with, is he the right guy? Should he have been benched in that game for Davis Mills, who went 4-1 in his 5 starts earlier in the season as the quarterback for the Houston Texans? Should he have been benched?
Man, as a fan, I say yes. When I've tried to put myself in maybe DeMeco Ryans, shoes or anything like that, it's really hard to all of a sudden just bench your guy in the divisional round in the middle of it all.
And then come back from
and try to come back from it. That New England defense is good, right? Yeah. And at that point, CJ Stroud gives you, your biggest boom or bust, I'll put it that way. And it's definitely something where I would rather take the boom or bust at that point with CJ Stroud than I would with Davis Mills, hoping that on some miracle he's going to come out there second half and try to pull something together that may not be there, because Davis Mills is going to be more of a system guy than CJ Stroud is, right? So CJ Stroud is going to be able to bring that playmaking ability. Davis Mills is going to just do what the play sheet is called. He's not going to try to do anything crazy or special unless it just happens once or twice, but that boomer bust is what I look at. And I think when I look at D'Amico Ryan's shoes, you had to put your chips all in on CJ Stroud, as you should. He's your franchise quarterback. There's no like turning back from it. Do you think even if they still lost with Davis Mills, the reporters are still going to ask, why did you bench Stroud? Obviously they would see the turnovers and see that as a point of view, but what kind of tone does that set going into the offseason, going into next year?
Yeah,
because a lot of drama.
Once you bitch a guy like that and you take him off the field for his backup in a moment that matters, we're not talking the last game of the season where we already have the playoffs clinched. Yeah. You pull him out in that game, that tells everybody, it tells the league, it tells the player, it tells the team, we have to reconsider who our quarterback is here.
Yep.
And that just changes the tone of everything for everybody, for the front office, for the head coach, for the player, and considering who the head coach is of that team and the attitude he has towards his team and his guys, I think even if he felt that would have been a good thing to do, his better judgment said, nope, this is our guy. I'm not going to destroy his confidence. He's still got a career in front of him. We're just going to have to figure out what it's going to take to get him back to where he was when he first came into the league, because something has happened. There is something that has changed in his production and the way he plays on the field now as we've progressed here into a couple seasons further. So while I can understand fans of Houston wanting to see Davis Mills come in and take over and try to keep what was left of the train on the tracks, I think for the benefit of the team long term, it was the right decision to leave him in the game and run with what brung you, and just stay with it and see what happens. And they lost 28-16. It was a bad look, but that defense is something special. It can't be categorized as a legendary defense or an all-time defense now because unfortunately they didn't win anything. Yeah. But I actually think it's probably one of the better defenses I've seen in years on tape that didn't accomplish anything due to, the struggles of the team as a whole. But man, that defense is a hell of a gnarly thing to see on the TV and watch. It was fantastic. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that defense is 120% special. Like, it was crazy on even the wild card round. I mean, that's been their story of the season, though, is they kind of have like a similar story to Philly. Is the defense is great. The defense is carrying them through the season, through their playoff games, through everything like that. But their offense could just never get going to support it. And it sucks because in the NFL, the teams that win games, the teams that win Super Bowls, both sides have to click. It's not like one can carry you and the other can struggle as bad as it does. Like Dallas, great offense, horrible defense. Right. Great defense for the Texans, horrible offense. And it at some point, it all deadheads.
Yeah. So to answer the question, is CJ Stroud the right guy? Man, I think the jury's out on that. I know he's got an option in his contract, fourth, fifth-year option, something like that.
Yeah.
He's had success as the quarterback. He's been in the playoffs. He's struggled in that environment. Do you move on? I'm not sure you move on just yet. I think you pick up one more year and a prove-it year, and you see where, how the cookie crumbles after that, and you'll know what you have. Usually by this time, you kind of know what kind of quarterback you're going to be. But I think he showed such a flash in that first season and a half that he's earned the chance to get right and get back to the level of play that he's expected to have and what he himself puts him in as a top 5 quarterback in the league. So, back up that confidence and let's see it. And then if you can prove it on this fourth year, you get a long-term deal and you're the franchise quarterback of the Houston Texans for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Derek Mack, how's it going? We're just talking some playoff football, and then we're going to get into a deep dive about some coaching cycle stuff, even within the Cowboys himself, the defensive coordinator. But yeah, I totally agree. And anybody in our chat, man, let us know, is CJ Stroud the right guy? Do you feel, just looking at as an outside perspective, do you feel that maybe he is going to keep growing, or does I truly think that Houston, they're not going to fire D'Amico Ryans, but they need to go get an offensive coordinator that can really develop a quarterback. Like, if you brought Mike McDaniel into the building somehow as your OC, like, that's going to elevate Stroud. I think that's what they're looking for, because they have all the defensive pieces. They have to find a way to build Stroud onto that next level, and the only reason I say that is because Troy Aikman called it out on TV. It was like, he straight up just was like, he's been chasing that rookie success that you talked about earlier, and like he's not developing, he's not growing. He's just trying to chase what happened his first year, and you just can't do that in the league. Like Dak Prescott, go watch his. And I relay a lot of things to the Cowboys because that's what we are. We're just Cowboys fans. But watch how he used to play ball in 2016 to 2020. Watch under the Mike McCarthy era, and then watch this past year and just watch how much he's grown and how much his IQ has grown and how much maybe better shape he's in than ever. So,
yeah, for sure. And that's what it's all about. So, with Houston Texans future, it's going to be interesting to see, Mike McDaniels, he's going to be excellent wherever he goes. He made that Miami Dolphins team very challenging. They didn't have a lot of wins, but playing them was tough, because they were a reflection of kind of who he is as a person, underestimated, overlooked, probably fast-witted, quick-witted, smart guy, quick with ideas, very clever. And that's kind of how the team played. You look at their primary weapons, they're all like little gritty, tough, fast dudes that, can get out and make things happen. A lot of run after catch and yards after and everything like that. So I think he can really do a lot with a talented offense. And when that's all that's on his plate is being the offensive coordinator instead of being a head coach and a coordinator, he's going to contribute a lot to a team that already has some good, solid pieces around them. So I'm really curious to see where he's going to land. I know he's got a lot of irons in the fire, so much so that I think he's actually withdrawing his candidacy from a couple of spots, which is great if you have that many options. But the kind of mind that he has is going to be effective just about anywhere he ends up landing. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that goes.
All right. So let's flip the script here. So now we talked about CJ Stroud. Is he the right guy? Now let's answer a question in the NFC North and the NFC picture in general. How good is Caleb Williams? I mean,
so we have the Bears and the Rams, right? This was we talked about the Broncos, the Bills, Pats, and Texans. Now we're moving on to the Bears and the Rams, and the Rams is last minute 20-17 victory over the Chicago Bears at home there in overtime. Fantastic game. Caleb Williams. I can take credit for saying that I thought this guy was going to turn into something. It's true. I said it.
Yeah.
I dubbed Caleb Williams the Night King, and winter is coming, baby, because this guy is only going to get better. That pass he made to the corner of the end zone to his tight end will go down as one of the just most iconic plays, not only for the Bears, but for the NFL in a long time. Dude, that was spectacular. You talk about both of us are sitting there stunned, mouths wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it was a loss, man, I'll let you take it over. That was amazing to see. That was so cool.
Dude, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it in words, because the way that he just turns around, you're talking fourth down, he snaps the ball, he starts running back because that pass rush is beaming through, and all of a sudden you're like, well, it's over. We all know how this story plays out for about 99% of quarterbacks. They just start scrambling circles, and then they're just going to heave something up, and it ain't going to work. All of a sudden he heaves it up, and we're like, oh, there's a corner where, he's going to knock it down. And all of a sudden it's like, bang. There was no push off either, which was amazing to me, by the way. I thought there was a push off the rip. all of a sudden, tight end backs up a step. Corner is like at the front pylon and not realizing the ball is actually chunked deeper than where he's at. And that tight end's just like, bam. But, just for our viewers to know, this guy drafted Caleb Williams in I'm pretty sure the 5th or 6th round of fantasy football. Like he was that committed. Like he drafted him almost right after he drafted Baker most of the time. If Baker wasn't there, he got Caleb Williams. But, talking about Caleb Williams, the Bears, we did a film study early in the year too, trying to just kind of warn our viewers and warn our fans that, hey, this guy's got the ability to kind of do some crazy playmaking and that was in the early stages of this offense, in the early stages of Ben Johnson and what they were doing. And, we learned real fast in that game of how explosive Caleb Williams can be, how shifty, how magician-y, Caleb Williams can be. And he only got better from there. It seemed like after week 14, they were hot. They were somehow scoring all the time, and they were unstoppable. Him and that tight end Loveland are going to be a special duo. I mean, that is like Jason Witten, Tony Romo kind of things going on there. And I will say this, you're probably going to ride a low to start next year. I'm going to assume teams are going to study their film. They're going to try to figure you out. They're going to try to figure out you and Ben Johnson. But I assume for the long-term future, Chicago's going to be all right. As long as Ben Johnson can coach Caleb Williams the way he's doing it right now, because Caleb Williams in the past, and he still shows signs of it, and he's learning, is he's got that arm like Mahomes. Sometimes he just be throwing ducks. And I don't mean like ducks like bad passes. I'm talking like he just shoots for the back of the fans, all the way in the back of the stadium when it's 10-yard pass or whatever. His arm is so strong. And for Caleb Williams to start honing that skill like he did this year is really what made the difference for Chicago. Finding that ability to really narrow down those mistakes that he was having last year and not turning the ball over as much and not overthrowing receivers, not underthrowing receivers. And I think that plays a big credit to how play calling happens. That's something that
here's the thing though. It's like what you're talking about is he can play above the board. He's got that ability to make crazy plays. Yep. He can whip up magic and cast spells when he's in a pinch. And when, the game's on the line, he can do all that stuff. He can ad-lib. It's crazy to watch him play. But what's going to make him a legend in this game is getting the easy layup stuff right. It's like he can shoot the threes. He can do the crazy dunks. He's got behind the back passes, and all the cool Euro tricks and everything. But he struggles in the free throw game, right? Yeah. And once he gets that lined up with everything else, I mean, dude's going to be a rock star. But that's how I view him in his development going forward. Once he gets that last piece under his belt, just the easy layup, just give what they get, just take what they give you.
Yep.
He's going to be unstoppable with Ben Johnson. They're going to be in this together for years and be a problem in the North.
Yeah. My biggest thing is that's a great point, because I'm thinking about it now, when you talk about layups, how many times they turned the ball over? 2 or 3 times in that game? They still turned the ball over a lot. If you don't, it's like for Buffalo and Chicago, it could be a totally different weekend for y'all if y'all don't turn the ball over. Right. When you don't turn the ball over, you don't give them short field, you don't give them momentum swings, you don't give them free points or wherever you turned it over at, but you can control games by just not turning the ball over. Imagine if they didn't turn the ball over 3 times and pinned them deep or took a field goal or even scored a touchdown in those moments. They blow them out instead. And this isn't Rams versus Seahawks and Denver versus
you held the Rams to 17 points.
Yeah.
That's tough to do.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's like, hey, now we need to work on the layups. We know you got the explosiveness. We know you can do the craziest of craziest things. You're the Harlem Globetrotter of all quarterbacks.
Learn to bunt, man.
Yeah.
Sack fly, dude. Figure it out.
Now it's time for you to learn how to just be the Michael Jordan. Do the fundamentals right. And so I think if that happens, it'll be a good road for him.
So you like what you see from Caleb Williams? You think he's gonna turn into what everybody expected and thought that he would?
I think because of Ben Johnson, I think he will. I think if it was still Matt Eberflus out there, or if it was someone that wasn't very offensive minded to unlock the ability of Caleb Williams or find a way to play to his strengths instead of him just being raw talent, actually honed the talent. Yeah, I think that's what's going to get him there.
It's going to be really interesting to see now that we've seen, all the tools in his tool belt and what he can actually do. This is year one. They're gonna go, back to the bat cave here and, put up the chalkboard and invent new weapons and new tools and bring in new players and fresh ideas to build off of what they've already accomplished this season.
Yep.
I mean, football is so much fun, and to see this kind of stuff going on, now there's the NFC Beast, and now there's, the North up there that all have dynamic, explosive teams with really good players on the rosters. It's fun to watch how this is all going to develop and to see the rivalries happen and how good these teams are getting, and to know that, these quarterbacks that lead these teams, some of them are pretty young. I mean, we have Dak, he's a little older, but some of these guys are going to be, going at each other for the next 8 to 10 years. And, it's a privilege, and it's so much fun to talk about it and watch it. So I'm already excited for next year, because of the way this is shaping up with the coaching changes and everything that's going on. Man, we've got some really epic football ahead of us.
All right, I'm gonna go on a stretch here. All right,
sure.
But you're a Game of Thrones fan. I'm a Game of Thrones fan. Let me put it this way. All right.
Yeah.
If King's Landing is the NFL playoffs, and let's say that's where the Lombardi Trophy is held and everything,
sure.
We've got the NFC North, except for in this Game of Thrones, there's no everyone's protected under the Starks. The North's just up there, and they all fight to the death to crown one King of the North, right?
Right.
And then if I compare it to what would be the NFC East in a Game of Thrones thing, I think
Stormlands, man.
The Stormlands, okay.
Yeah, or
when
the Vale.
When I think of the NFC West, I think of the Lannisters because of the 49ers and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the NFC South, where are we thinking there? Where's their kind of origin on this Game of Thrones?
Dorne, man. They're Dorne.
They're Dorne. All right, fair enough. I was going on a stretch there, but
sunshine, shimmering isles. That's the tropical desert. Water gardens and cactus area. So that's logical. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, we're not gonna go into AFC, but for the NFC, I started thinking. I was like, man, you start talking about King in the North, and I was like, let's go on a stretch here. But speaking of kind of some upcoming great games, we are going to.
We got one more. Okay. You're perfect.
Yeah. We've got the Seahawks versus the Rams this weekend in a NFC championship kind of game.
Sure.
You know what? Let me set up the picture here, right? The AFC West was dominant this year, except for the Cardinals, right? Except for somehow Dallas loses to the Cardinals. Anyways, this is not a Dallas rant. This is a playoff talk here. We've got the Rams, who have been on and off this year, but they're led by a super veteran in Matthew Stafford with Devontae Adams and a hot young receiver in Puka Nacua, right? That guy's been dominating everywhere. The defense is built together based off great offseason, great drafts, and they're putting everything together to put the best defense they can out there. On the flip side, Seattle has somehow rebuilt this whole thing in a couple of years after getting rid of Pete Carroll and, this whole Russell Wilson, Geno Smith kind of era, and have now formed Sam Darnold, who they picked up from Minnesota, who no one really thought would be that good up in Seattle, took on Cooper Kupp, and now have another receiver in Jackson Smith, who is playing out of his mind just as much as Puka is. What do you expect for this game? What can maybe the viewers expect? I mean, this game is going to be insane on the NFC Championship.
It looks like it could line up to be insane. The Seahawks crushed the 49ers. The way they came out and started that game, right out of the gate, Shaheed, boom, runs it back for a touchdown. The crowd's in it. The players are fired up. I mean, the 49ers had no chance. They got demolished. Solid. I know I'm going backwards a little bit, but I just wanted to recap that last playoff game. Saleh put his heart into coaching that defensive unit. And despite the score, I think the defense played really, really hard. They were just outgunned by a superior motivated and a superior talented team, and they got blown off the board. Hopefully Saleh will have success where he's landing. But to talk about this game, so we've got the number 1 Seahawks going against the number 5 Rams, right? both teams are really, really good at what got them here this year. They have star-studded lineups, both on offense and defense. The Seahawks defense is obviously better than the Rams' defense, but not by a ton. And I think the Rams' offense is slightly better than the Seahawks' offense. So it's a well-balanced team. They're both coached really, really well. The difference for me is the Q on both of these teams. I think the Rams have the better quarterback. And I think when you look at their last two games, Sam Darnold has 6 interceptions and 3 touchdowns, and Matthew Stafford has 5 touchdowns and no interceptions in their last 2 games against each other. So I think that's what's going to be the difference in this game. I think the Seahawks are going to compete. I think they're going to make it very, very challenging, but I just don't think that Matt Stafford's going to turn the ball over. And I could see Darnold turning the ball over as the quarterback for the Seahawks. So I think that could be what it comes down to in another tight, 24-2017 game, is which quarterback does a better job of not CJ Strouding.
So what you're saying is the key to the Seahawks-Rams game is going to be about who turns over the ball the least. And that's a fair statement, right? You got two great defenses who are going to capitalize on any kind of turnover that you're going to throw out there or give them. The question will be which quarterback will turn it over the least. And then on top of all that, which offense can play better. And, it could be a tale of two stories, right? We thought that the Seahawks, Niners game was going to go the distance. I really did. I thought
I did too. I thought that was going to be a banger, man.
Yeah. I thought they had it dialed in. And obviously, there was always that, little bit of that perspective of, with the injury prones and everything like that, what does happen to that team. And it finally, hit to an end. But I really thought that they would come out there and at least put up a fight, and they did not ever show up. That Seahawks defense tore them apart. Pressures, blitzes, edge rushers. I mean, how about DeMarcus Lawrence calling out the Dallas Cowboys for never making it to championship games or going to win championships, and now he's in the championship game? We laughed at him, and he laughed back. He kept the receipts.
Right. He's not wrong.
But talking from the Rams' perspective, I think the veteran leadership of Matthew Stafford may really shine this week. And I only say that because he's been in this situation. He's been in it, only once, but he's been here. He's been in the league for a long time, and he's done it. This is Sam Darnold's first real big-time game. Last week was a big-time game, but, you had to buy, you're fresh and all that. But now you're coming into an NFC championship where you're at home. The stakes are going to be high. The fans are going to be roaring. The 12 fan will be alive in Seattle. And can you live up to the expectations and the pressure? We'll see, but it should be one heck of a game.
Yeah, I'm anticipating it will. I think one of the best coaches in football and one of the best current quarterbacks in football are with the Rams. And, I have them favored. I think they'll pull this one out, but I expect the Seahawks to play with the same intensity that they did against the 49ers. It's not going to be easy for the Rams, but like I said earlier, it's going to come down to who makes that crucial turnover and puts their team in the worst spot first. And isn't it crazy that these teams, if you actually look at them, they're very similar. You've got Nakua and Jackson Smith on the other side. You've got similar running backs. You've got similar quarterbacks. One's just a little bit more experienced and has been in this situation and had more success in it. Coaches are kind of similar. McVay does have a little bit of trouble with McDonald sometimes. The defenses are pretty similar. I think the Seahawks is just having a little bit more success than the Rams. But these teams are a lot alike. So, I mean, this is really the best matchup we could ask for out of this pool of teams for the playoffs.
Yeah, man. And, I would talk about the AFC Championship, but I think with Bo Nix's ankle injury. I think it's very unfortunate for Denver
Yeah,
fans.
man, that's really
And
crazy.
I don't know how good Jared Stidham's really going to be. I could be wrong, and I've been wrong before because, we all know in 2017, the Cry Eagles cry. They pulled it off with their backup Nick Foles, and
Yeah.
it could happen. Miracles do happen, but I don't see it with that New England team. The way that they're coached by
Oh,
Mike
yeah.
Vrabel,
I wish they would, Um, you know how I've felt about the Patriots all year. I know that
their
they're playing.
their route's been easy.
I think it has been a little easy, and I'm not just trying to hate, but I just feel like right now, to me, they're still paper tigers. I think they're good. I think they're well coached. I'm not taking anything away from that. I just don't think they've been hit in the mouth well enough yet. They've played with a lead most of the time. So I know momentum is everything, and that's not an excuse to look at them that way. But I I may get proven wrong, but I just don't think they're going to be the Super Bowl champs. So we'll see if I'm right or I'm wrong.
Yeah, my money is on the NFC team winning the Super Bowl this year, whether it's the Rams or the Seahawks. I think they're going to win Super Bowl no matter what, whether it's New England or Denver coming out of that.
So what do you think about this? With Stidham coming in to take over for the now injured Bo Nix, with the coach being who it is and the defense playing as well as it plays, I mean, this is probably one of the last remaining elite defenses in the playoffs. Do you think that there is a significant drop off between Bo Nix and Stidham?
Yes, and I say that because I haven't seen how Stidham plays at all. I mean, they said he hasn't played a game since 2013, and I don't even remember those, or 2023, I'm sorry. And I don't even remember those games at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know any. And look, he's from Stephenville. And for
Yeah.
y'all that don't know, I went to school at Tarleton State University in Stephenville, and I really didn't know this until a couple weeks ago. So I'm rooting for him,
Sure.
but I mean, Sean Payton can be very friendly to it. I think that's what's the benefit is Sean Payton can work in his system with any quarterback, but will he have enough reps to be comfortable with what what's at stake for this game is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, you got a good running back group, you've got good wide receivers, and if he can have it schemed up to where all he's got to do is drive the bus, so to speak, and just quarterback this thing through. I mean, I think they have a fighting chance with the way that defense is played. Once you get to the playoffs at this point, especially when you're this deep in, you kind of know what you need to do, and everybody's head's in the right place, and everybody kind of knows what to expect and how to take how to approach this. So It's basically, as long as you don't come in and blow it, they're in this. I think they definitely have a chance to beat the Patriots. I think they have as good a chance as anybody would. And to back up what you're saying, there is a drop off between Stidham, from Nix to Stidham, just because Bo has a little bit more of an ability to make difficult passes, and he's mobile. That mobility is a great bailout when you really, really need a 7-yard, conversion, and there's nowhere to throw the ball. I think that helps him a little bit. So as long as they don't get behind the sticks with Stidham, he's still an NFL quarterback. He's going to be able to make the right throws, but does he make the right choices and doesn't misread the defense and get pressured and rushed and spooked enough to where he turns it over and throws a pick or something like that. That's what's going to destroy their chances of winning this game, is if he's not mentally ready and staying sharp.
Yeah, I agree. It'll come down to the momentum of the game, one, but two, how much can Sean Payton keep the ball control on their side instead, or time of possession. I don't know why I said
100%. This is a time of possession game. Yeah.
So
throw it when you need to or have to, but run. You need a good day from special teams. And we know this as Dallas Cowboys fans. When you get into these kind of games where your defense is probably going to give up points and you need a hot start, you really have to rely on your team's group to come out and give you good field position, give them bad field position, and put you in, an advantageous situation every time there's an exchange.
Yeah. But
Go
all right.
Broncos.
Yeah, I hope for the best. I want 2 more good games. As long as I get 2 more good games, I'm good. And then 1 more after that in the Super Bowl, right?
Sure.
So, but all right, well, let's do what we came here to do.
All right.
Let's first talk about the NFL coaching cycle. So obviously we know with the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott's been fired. Cleveland Browns let go of Kevin Stefanski, who got fired or who got hired over the weekend by the Atlanta Falcons. And they also retained their DC, who Cowboys were trying to interview. Kind of expected once they declined the interview. Arizona Cardinals are still looking for a coach. The Raiders are still looking for a coach. The Ravens are still looking for a coach. And then Pittsburgh is still looking for a coach. And one of the things about Pittsburgh is they said Mike McCarthy is potentially coming in to interview. I think one of the top guys that Mike Tomlin said he recommended is what I read on Twitter today was Brian Flores. I think he'd be a great fit there. But kind of some guys who have also been hired, right? We talked about in last live. John Harbaugh, officially a New York Giant, did the press conference today. And then Jeff Haley, Miami Dolphins head coach. And then Robert Saleh, which was kind of random over the night, was
really
right around right over midnight is Robert Saleh, Tennessee Titans head coach, out of the blue. And I don't know if it was
what do you
more
think of that one. How do you like that Saleh to Tennessee?
For me, it's kind of the same situation he was in with the Jets. So what did he tell Tennessee to kind of convince them that what happened with New York was not going to happen there? Because again, it's a franchise who is needing a lot of help. They're kind of behind the 8 ball. They've had success in the past, and maybe are they trying to find someone that was close to Mike Vrabel and they knew that they made it work before and so they could do it again? I would be curious on how that interview went and how they convinced them about what happened in New York when it happened in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's a very similar situation. Good defense, struggling offense with a young quarterback. I think obviously that would be the first question anybody would ask him during an interview is, hey, how do we not repeat this last situation that you had in New York from happening again? Obviously, he had to have an answer, or they had to assist him with a solution. And I think that solution is going to be who they pick as an offensive coordinator. I'm guessing they probably already have somebody in mind that they want to put in that spot to help him develop Cam Ward in the offense. Don't know who that is. I'm not saying I have inside information. I'm just saying I'm guessing that when you hire a coach who has already been in a spot like this and did not have success and you put him in the same situation, him and you have done your homework and you know what to expect and how you plan to resolve that and prevent that from happening again. Obviously, that is having a strong offensive coordinator to, pair up with him so they can develop the team in tandem. So I think that's going to be a very, very important position to watch for moving forward in the coming weeks is who Tennessee brings in, because I think that will make or break Saleh's reign here. I think he's an excellent coach. As a defensive coordinator, he's one of the best, if not the best, but he's going to have some help with that offense because they need a lot. Great quarterback with a lot of talent, a lot of potential there. But this is how a young quarterback like that gets his career ruined.
Yeah, who's their wide receiver one? Like Calvin Ridley? I mean,
Calvin Ridley, as far as I know,
And then, like, even that
Tony
running
Pollard,
back, yeah.
I think he is what he is. He's very talented, but I think he's at the end of it now. You know what I mean? He's not spring chicken.
Yeah, so they're definitely he's got his work cut out for him again. Do I think Tennessee's maybe more of a loyal franchise if you're showing, some positive notes? Like if the defense is really good this year and the offense is really bad, it's like, okay, well, we made the right hire. Now, how do we keep developing Cam Ward and how do we keep helping him out?
New York's a tough environment. Yeah. You're in the spotlight there. It's a big market and they'll let you know how they feel. So he's probably got a little bit of grace there in Tennessee. They usually stick with their coaches for a little while, but they definitely got to get some help over there for him and Cam Ward if they're gonna compete in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I read some not reports, but kind of fans talking about this. Do you think the Tennessee Titans were panicking because of all the head coaches who were getting hired?
It could be, and if you're looking at the head coaching candidates that are out there, I mean, he's kind of a safe pick. You know, he
He is
has
a safe pick.
experience. You know, he has experience. He can run a defense very, very well. So, you know, you're guaranteed those two things, a good defense and experience. And before too many of them start falling off, because there's a lot of openings. I mean, you just went through a list. I think you named off 6 more.
Yeah.
You know, we've already had 3. And then that doesn't even include the OCs and DCs that are available. Coaches are going to start falling quick. So everybody's got their finger on the trigger. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But yeah, I think it was. I think the answer is yes to your question.
Yeah, this head coaching market has been one of the best head coaching markets I've seen in a long time. And I feel that most people, like Sean McDermott getting fired, has to only lead to because there may be better options out there. Like you're seeing some coaches get fired because they're like, wow, there's that.
Yeah, it's like trade a coach, you know. It's like, okay, well, we'll can this guy, we'll go get him, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, some guys who are, you know, in demand right now, of course, there's going to be Chris Shula, the Rams DC. Obviously, you won't be able to really talk to him until probably after the season or depending on how far they make it. Same thing with Clint Kubiak, the Seahawks OC. Sean McDermott, obviously, is going to be a hot topic. I haven't seen anybody actually request to interview him yet. Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator, I assume with the Bills maybe bringing in a new head coach, I assume they're looking for somebody offensive minded. So they probably are going to bring in their own kind of OC there. Yeah. You know, the Chargers DC, that Jesse Minter guy, great career at Michigan with Harbaugh, follows him to the NFL. Now is ready maybe to potentially step up. Jim Schwartz, you know, I haven't heard much about him. I know he's done a couple interviews with the Browns. I think that's probably a job he's going to get out there in Cleveland, considering he hasn't interviewed for any others yet. And then, of course, Brian Flores. And, you know, we've got our guys on the list that we know. I guess let's do this. Let me go back up to my list I got here for teams. Cleveland Browns. Do you feel comfortable with Jim Schwartz being hired there, or do you think they're still looking for something different?
You know, I kind of look at it as the Dallas Cowboys situation. You know, with Brian Schottenheimer,
in-house hire.
Yeah, it's an in-house hire. You know what you're going to get. You like the way he does things. You know, defensive coach, and obviously they've had a lot of success there. And it's the best case scenario because you don't really have to develop the defense anymore. You know, you just say, hey, keep doing what we were doing, and I'll concentrate on getting us some offensive development. He goes out and hires some really, really good assistants who could potentially be the same ones that are looking for OC and DC jobs right now. Yep. You know, they get on that staff and get a chance to work with Shador and that team as it develops, because, you know, they have a handful of good talent over there that they got in the draft. It's still young and in development. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what that looks like to me is let's grab a guy we know we're going to get known quantity, and we'll just roll this thing forward in continuity.
All right, let's see here. And then Arizona Cardinals. I mean, how are you feeling about that, right? They just got rid of Jonathan Gannon, and we'll get into all that in a minute, but do you feel that they're looking for an offensive coach? Are they looking for an experienced coach? Are they looking for a youthful coach? Are they like, what do you feel? Maybe just gut check here. What is everyone looking for?
I think you're at the point where, I mean, to me, it's a dumpster fire over there. You know, you had a really bad run with your head coach. You lost significant defensive coaches. You lost your key offensive coach in Clayton Adams to the Dallas Cowboys. And now you're questioning who your quarterback's going to be. You've got some talent, but it's spread on offense and defense. So you're not really power heavy on either side of the ball. Special teams is weak. I mean, you're trying to, you know, rebuild this plane while it's in flight. So I think you really need a coach that's got years of experience, who's done this before. This is not time to go experimental. This is, you bring in a really good leader and you let him develop everything from underneath you. And, you know, you transition out of that later on and get a new coach down the road. But right now you got to get this plane flying straight. And I think that's what they're going to look for, is someone this would be a good hire for like Mike McCarthy or, you know, Jim Schwartz, if he were available. This would be a good spot for him.
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores hasn't been a head coach yet, so this is.
He was a head coach for the Dolphins.
Oh, was he? So it's like, well, maybe that'll work for him. But I don't see this being a first-time head coach kind of position.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's kind of like that Tennessee Titans situation. You're just trying to build the foundation of this franchise again, and you need to start from the ground up with the rumors of Kyler Murray being let go,
Right.
trying to figure out what direction you want to go as a franchise to kind of get this show back on the road, and to bring in somebody that may not be, like you don't need a newbie walking in there trying to figure this thing out. You tried that with Jonathan Gannon, it didn't work out, and now it's time to maybe kind of bring in that experienced guy. So, Las Vegas Raiders, #1 pick. We know that they were awful this year, but they've got Genty, right? They've got some, Crosby. They've got some good, franchise cornerstone key pieces. But what kind of head coach are we looking for here?
This is where I think you put someone like Brian Flores.
Okay.
I think he identifies with that team and kind of what you expect for that's a gritty, hard-nosed, tough football team, and that's how they play. And that's pretty much been how they've always played. That's been their mystique. You look at the history of the Raiders, and they're the kind of guys that they punch you in the face when you play them. And Max Crosby kind of personifies that. And you need a hard-nosed leader on the sideline to keep that kind of a unit together and to keep them going in the right. They're kind of like the Detroit Lions. That's kind of how I view the team, and I view that coach and Dan Campbell. I think that's the kind of coach you need, and that's kind of what Brian Flores is. So I think he's a good fit for them.
I agree. I think when it comes to the Raiders, I think the biggest thing is getting, somewhat of a hot candidate, but an experienced candidate, but also at the same time, you need like a good mixture, because you have the key pieces. You're going to get the #1 pick, and you're probably going to end up with Mendoza. So it's a tempting job. It's a tough job, but it is a very tempting job to be able to maybe take over. Man, I don't know. I don't know anybody on top of my head. Like, I would have thought maybe, I'm thinking right here, Sean McDermott. Would you really be tempted to go take that? Or Sean McDermott looking to get back on a playoff team like Baltimore or Pittsburgh? I don't know. Do you think Sean McDermott would be stepping up to the plate for maybe a job like that?
Both of those. I really like both of those for McDermott. I could see Baltimore or Pittsburgh for him. And I actually think Mike McCarthy is probably the best fit for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But McDermott with the Ravens, man, that could work. That could be cool. It's just there's so much parity and so many teams that need a coach, and there's so many available. Yep. There's some crazy pairings that could happen. You get Brian Flores and Mike McDaniels on the same team or something crazy like that. It's like there's so many cool possibilities that can happen, but I don't think we're done yet either. I could see another coach or two moving on as well. Yeah, before this is all said and done, but we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
So Baltimore Ravens, you kind of spoke on here, like Sean McDermott. Are they looking for probably an experienced head coach, looking to kind of elevate them back onto the playoff level?
Yeah, I think they're going to go young and innovative. I think that's probably what they're looking for. Because if they were just looking for a solid coach with experience who, is very in control and kind of knows how to build a program and an organization, they let that go. So I think they're wanting to go, a little more modern in their offense. And I think that's probably what they're going to be looking for. So I don't know who they'd have in mind, but they pulled the trigger, and that's where they're at. You can't put the bullet back in the gun. So we'll see how that shakes out. But my guess is they're looking to get younger and innovative.
What about Pittsburgh Steelers? Do you think I like the Mike McCarthy, right? The connections there, we kind of know about that. Do you think he's more of like a bridge head coach? We talk about bridge quarterbacks, but is he more of like a bridge head coach who's there for like 3 or 4 years, kind of builds it back up? They get rid of all of the Aaron Rodgers and the old pieces, and they bring in youth, and then right as soon as they have a good season or a mediocre season, they let him go, and then they bring in someone young and innovative again?
I think that's what that is. I think you're exactly right. I think you bring him in, you've had a coach that's left that's been there forever. You don't have a quarterback. You don't really have an identity as a team other than the city of Pittsburgh and what comes with that as far as the history of the team and the accomplishments. But you've lost your identity with Mike Tomlin, right? Aaron Rodgers is probably done. He's not going to be there. So now not only do you not really have a base of players, you don't have a leadership base. And from experience, we can tell you is Mike McCarthy, he's not hot and he's not cold. He's consistent and he's going to give you the same thing every week, season after season. And I think when you're at this point, similar to where the Arizona Cardinals are, that's kind of what you need. You need somebody who's going to come in, keep the wings even and level to the ground, and start pulling in the players with an idea and a vision for where the team's going to be in 3 years, so that you can hand the keys to somebody else to take over what's been put in place by a good, experienced coach.
Yeah. I cannot believe that this coaching cycle is the way it is.
It's wild, man. There's so many candidates. It's hard to sit here and say, okay, this coach needs to go here and that coach needs to go there, because like I said earlier, there's just so much parity and there's so many coaches available. There's going to be coaches that are going to get hired and put into positions that we wouldn't have guessed or even thought about yet. But it's going to happen. I think we're all going to be surprised. But I think the conversation we just had about the teams that are currently looking for a coach, I think we're pretty fair in what we think would work best or what we think they're intending to do in their search. But we're going to be wrong about some things. We're probably going to be wrong about, what Dallas is thinking and the direction they're going to go. So it's fun to watch, though. It's very entertaining to see how this all works out.
Well, perfect transition, sir, because let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and their defensive coordinator search. I'm looking at the Twitter feed here, and just about 10 to 20 minutes ago, they concluded their interview with Jonathan Gannon. And next up is our guy that a lot of guys are actually growing onto, and I've kind of grown onto it too. Christian Parker, the DB coach out of Philly. So kind of give me your spiel here. Kind of give me, maybe there's some updates out there for the viewers they haven't heard of yet. Let us know where we at with the defensive coordinator search.
So like you've said, we've seen Jonathan Gannon, we've seen Christian Parker. I think there's one more interview tomorrow. And then we're waiting on Jim Leonard and the Broncos resolution or the end of their season to shake out, whether that's, this week or, in early February after the Super Bowl. But that seems to me to be what it's down to. We're down to that final four. And from what I've seen on Twitter, as I'm sure you have, 3 of these coaches seem to have pretty good consideration from Dallas Cowboys fan nation, with the exception of Jonathan Gannon. I think due to his reputation. Okay, I'll put it to you like this. Jerry Jones likes guys on the rebound. He likes guys that have recently failed because he thinks they're just really, really charged up. They're run back into the fire. And that's well and great. And sometimes that works. But sometimes there's a reason that the guy failed, right? And I'm trying not to fall into that pit and just run with the crowd and say, no to Jonathan Gannon. I don't know the guy personally. I don't know him. All I can do is grade what I've seen on games and what's happened in the National Football League. So with that in mind, he didn't have a ton of success with the Cardinals, but he's also acting as a head coach. And there are situations where some guys are just better at being DCs or OCs than they are at being head coaches, so maybe that's what this situation is, but we have no way of knowing that. I do know that he's got relationships with current, people on the staff of the Cowboys, Clayton Adams and he'll spend some time together. I think he's got another connection from earlier in his career as well. So I definitely think there's, sponsorship in the building for him, but Dallas Cowboys as a fan are not really too high on the 43-year-old, former Arizona Cardinals head coach. going to be an interesting one to see. So he was obviously the Philadelphia Eagles defense coordinator for a couple years when the defense was really good, and they went to that Super Bowl. Outside of that, I don't have a whole lot on Jonathan Gannon. Just kind of lukewarm.
Yeah. So Jonathan Gannon, for me, and I put this on Twitter today, and he feels like a Matt Eberflus part 2 kind of hire. You're just kind of like head coach that didn't work out. You're going to bring him back and hope that his DC skills are good. Would I have a little bit more hope for Jonathan Gannon than I would Matt Eberflus? Yes, I do believe that Jonathan Gannon would do a better job than Matt Eberflus, but I don't think it'd be by a lot, right? I think Dallas Cowboys fans get tired of being in this cycle of just trying to retread tires. You got bald tires and you're out there with a pocket knife, marking treads back on them, hoping that these tires are going to work. And yes, we've had, situations where it's worked out in the past, right? Dan Quinn, he was a former head coach, got fired. We brought him in as a DC. He works out, and then now he's a head coach again, right? It can work, but I don't have high hopes for it. I would love to try something different, something that's, what other teams do, discover a guy who would be a great DC in the future for another team or a great head coach. I would love to be a team that it's like, hey, under Brian Schottenheimer, if you have an offense or a defense coordinator there, they're probably going to end up being a good head coaching candidate in about 2 or 3 years. Watch, right? And have multiple guys come through the building like that, and not, well, we're just trying to pair a bunch of veterans together. Like when you look at people talk about coaching trees, right? That's what I'm relating it to. Like people talk about the Sean McVay.
Yeah, look at exactly. Look at the coaching tree for Jonathan Gannon and Eberflus. And you don't want history to repeat itself.
Yeah. If you look, and what I'm trying to get at is if you look under those coaching trees, you're like, oh, if he's under Sean McVay coaching tree, I want him. Or he's under the Shanahan coaching tree, I want him. Or if he's under, that's the kind of culture I would love to develop with Schottenheimer if he's here for the long term. Is that like, well, we have Marty Ball, and then we got Brian Schottenheimer. And if you're under the Schottenheimer, coaching tree, you're probably a really good leader of men. You're a really good head coach, and you're schematically right. Because that's how I want this to go. And the only way you can get there is by hiring a Christian Parker, right? A DB's guy who's going to become a DC and eventually develop into a great head coach. Jim Leonard can be the same way. Durante Jones can be the same way. Jonathan Gannon just literally feels like me going out to my car. Or, my car doesn't have ball tires right now, but if it did have ball tires, it's me going out there, taking it off, saying, you know what, to pass my inspection, I'm going to pocket knife some lines into my tire, put it back on there, and roll it down the road and hope it doesn't blow a tire.
Yeah, you got 60% more tread now.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at it from that point of view, like you said, with coaching trees, okay, so let's say Matt Eberflus, right? He was a defensive coordinator, went to be a head coach, didn't have success, dropped back down to a defensive coordinator, didn't have success again, and now he's out, right? If John Gannon is a disciple of his, John Gannon, defensive coordinator, Arizona Cardinals head coach, didn't have success, drops down to DC for the Dallas Cowboys, what do you anticipate is going to happen? If he's Matt Eberflus Jr., he's probably not going to have success again because one, that's the parity of being in the tree. But not only that, the odds are really stacked against you here. You've got a conglomerate of personnel from several different regimes. We need 5 additional starters on this team. Jerry literally broke the team a week before the season started last year. And we've just had a Jerry guy fall flat on his face. And you are 20 years younger than him. And you're coming in to pick up the same torch that he had. It's just, to me, it just does not bode well. I think you need a fresh take on all this. We need to go not just cast a wide net, but we need to go completely against the grain of what we feel comfortable doing in this situation, because that's what we've done time and time again, and it hasn't worked out right. So I think, like you said, we need some guys to come in and develop under Shotty, whether it's offense or defense, and then they can move on and grow in their career after they've established something here. But, as I look at this, I can't help but think that Jonathan Gannon is not the right fit for this DC spot.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, it's a lukewarm kind of. It's kind of like a here we go again.
Yeah,
Myers. Let me ignore the problems and kind of just let it be, And it is what it is. But here's what I'm gonna provide. We're gonna end up in a Jonathan Gannon situation, and Dallas is gonna be like, well, we had no other options. We couldn't do nothing else. If we don't decide to kind of start making some move on this DC, because at the end of the day, if you're laying on Jim Leonard to get done with the playoffs, it could be one more week, right? But what if Christian Parker gets hired? What if
tell me what you think about Christian Parker? This is our rivals' assistant coach, one of their I think is their passing game coordinator. He's 34 years old. He's pretty young, but from everything he's put into the league so far, he's got a high reputation and he's done really well. So what would you think about somebody like a Christian Parker being considered for this job? Not just considered, but actually put in the position to be the DC.
I think for what Dallas is needing help with on defense, he's a good fit to do it. I almost feel like a Al Harris Jr. kind of vibes with it, right? You look at the DBs he had over there, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. He made those guys into all pros. These guys into Pro Bowlers. These guys into making plays in the Super Bowl, getting Philly pretty far, right? Yes, he may not have been the DC, but he is a big part of developing that cornerback room, right? And obviously, Dallas has burnt that relationship with Al Harris. And what better way to maybe go get a similar Al Harris to call your plays or to run your defense than a guy like him? And that's how I feel about him. I think he's, like you said, 34 years old. He's got that young and hungry mentality. I think it would be great to steal somebody from Philly. Philly fans aren't really looking forward to potentially losing him. People are saying, oh, Dallas ain't gonna hire him because he's from Philly or whatever. I'm like, what better way to work? Let me put it this way for you, right?
It's a Super Bowl winning team. That's one of the top defenses in the league. So why not steal from them? Go ahead.
Well, let me put it this way. What defensive coordinator gives Dak Prescott the most trouble that they always talk about? Vic Fangio.
It just happens to be all the ones we're interviewing.
Yeah, well, Vic Fangio is specifically one that they name on national TV broadcast that Dak Prescott always struggles against.
Right.
So why not go hire the guy who knows how to, one, stop your quarterback to help you elevate your offense even more, but second part of that is
if you can stop the likes of Dak Prescott and Matt Stafford, who are kind of like the long tooth, witty, savvy veterans in the league, then you can stop anybody.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. He worked under a guy who knows how to stop our offense. So bring him in, one, to help with your offense, but two, to develop a defense. I think he's somebody that will also be here for 2 or 3 years. Jonathan Gannon does a good job for a year. He's gone. I'm not looking for that. I need somebody to stick around Dallas for 2 or 3 years, develop a roster, to build, like you talked about in multiple episodes now, that ability to grow the guys under him. Once he leaves, it's like, hey, we have an internal guy inside the building who can step up and take his job.
Yeah, not only do you want to interview a defensive coordinator candidate, you want to interview who he's going to bring in, who's going to be his assistant, who's going to be his, passing game and his D-line coach, because that is potentially who's going to be your future DC once this guy develops. Because you got to look at this with Christian Parker, okay? He's 34 years old, okay? He's a former wide receiver and cornerback, okay? He coached defensive backs at Virginia State, Norfolk State, Notre Dame, A&M. He became a defensive analyst, went to the Green Bay Packers as a defensive quality coach, went to the Denver Broncos as the defensive back coach from 21 to 23, and is currently the Philadelphia Eagles passing game coordinator and defensive back coach as of 2024. So he is moving very, very fast.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because he's very good and he's developing very quickly. So now is the time to grab a guy like this, because he's going to deliver something new, something innovative, and he's going to have a lot of energy and excitement in the manner that he does it, which is contagious. And that's how you develop the younger guys under you to come up and take your position one day when you move on. So he's literally the definition of what you want in a young DC to come in and change the forecast for your whole side of the football. And I mean, looking at this and just going over my notes here, that's exactly what I think Dallas needs to be looking for, whether it's Christian Parker, Durante Jones, Jim Leonard. If that's the way they're going to go, these are the right guys. Let's move on from this retread stuff.
Yeah, and I think what's holding them back is maybe the Jim Leonard still being in the playoffs and all that. But
Sure.
I just see, when I look at, if we're just talking Durante,
is he worth waiting on though? How long do you wait? If somebody goes out and hires Durante Jones tomorrow.
Yeah, I've also heard rumors of, Leonard wanting to join the Giants as their DC. So it's like, what happens if you lose to Christian Parker and Durante Jones and all of a sudden
Jim Leonard goes to the Giants?
Yeah,
now you're left with Gannon.
Right. Yeah, now you're stuck with Gannon. And that's what I'm fearful is going to happen. And I think when you're looking at it overall, your highest upside, I think, is Christian Parker. I think the most aggressive boomer bust would be a Durante Jones, and I think your more like safest pick would be like Leonard, with the connections and all that. But I think the biggest fail of a pick would be Gannon. I think if you were to come out with Gannon, starting off by firing Eberflus early, you already worked ahead, right? I've talked about this before. Dallas has been very proactive in this search, right? They fire Eberflus earlier than I thought they would. Then they start casting this wide net of candidates earlier than I thought they would. Now
put in more candidates than we thought they would, different candidates than we expected. But they've hit everything we've asked them to do.
Don't let it all fall apart now because you want to
don't reward us by giving us Gannon. At least try. Yeah,
it's like don't keep in your back pocket like, oh, we've got Gannon no matter what we want to do here, and if everyone else leaves, we still got Gannon. Go get the guy you want.
The only coach I know of, Slater, that's not being asked to be interviewed by anybody else.
Yeah, I like Christian Parker, and I like it because he worked under Vic Fangio. I think that's what's the most attractive to me is that the one defense coordinator when he was at Denver, when he's with Philly, who gives our team the most trouble is Vic Fangio. Take a predecessor, take someone who's worked under him for a year or two and who has developed great cornerbacks. How nice would it be next year at the end of the season, going into playoffs, to be like, DeRon Bland is a all-pro corner again. Yep. Chavon Ravel is a pro bowler, or, safeties wise, maybe he figures it out. He gets a Caleb Downs in his hands with those two corners. It's like, I would love it. I think it's the best pick.
All right, so let's move on from Christian Parker and let's talk about Durante Jones. So Durante Jones is 47 years old. Okay, he played. I think he was a cornerback for a year or so, and then he started coaching in 2001.
Yep.
And let's see, we got Nicholas State, safeties coach. He was a defensive coordinator for several years. Then he went on to he coached at Hawaii as a secondary coach. Okay. Moved on to Wisconsin as a defensive back coach. First came in the NFL in 2016 as the Miami Dolphins assistant defensive backs coach. On to Cincinnati as a cornerbacks coach. Up to Minnesota in 2020 as the defensive backs coach. Then he went back down to the NCAA as LSU's defensive coordinator. And then he came back up to Minnesota Vikings in 2022 as their defensive backs coach. Got promoted to defensive passing game coordinator in 2023, which is what he currently is for the team right now. So this guy is another one who has seen a lot of coaching, has been in a lot of places, has a lot of different angles, and he's a protege of one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, in my opinion, up there in Minnesota. So, I mean, this one has a lot of potential too. I mean, I like Christian Parker a little bit better, but
he has a large track record of working with DBs too. And I think that's kind of the theme with Dallas is they're trying to target somebody who's worked with a lot of secondary, who is able to I think they know in the front seven, they're going to be all right no matter what happens, but they really need somebody to develop that defensive backfield, especially with it, needing a lot of help. But I like him too. I'm not against him at all. I think him and Christian Parker would be ideally the top two candidates that we've interviewed so far, right? You know,
Right.
if you start talking the conversations of Flores and Schwartz and McDermott somehow comes in, then we may have some better options. But with the guys we've interviewed in the building, those two guys have been pretty sharp right now. And I think the biggest thing for me is he's got a little bit more experience than Christian Parker, right? So he's kind of been in a lot more locker rooms, NCAA and, you know, NFL. The one thing that it's not really scary or concerns me, he's bounced around a lot. You know, it's kind of like, you know, why he hasn't been able to hold kind of a steady job in the NFL or in NCAA, which I know in NCAA you're trying to get back to the NFL, so you're kind of looking for promotions there. But from what I've known and what I've read about him is, you know, he's obviously well respected. He's got the strong track record with the corners and safeties. And one thing I do like about him too is, from what I understand, is the way that he looks at schemes and all that. He's very aggressive. He likes to, you know, send pressures, heats, you know, and I'm sure that's because he's a secondaries coach and he can tell a defensive coordinator when he even called plays at a time of how to send pressures at the right time. He kind of gives me my gosh, what's the Chiefs defensive coordinator? I'm blanking. It's
oh gosh, I know who you're talking about.
Cat, if you're here, help me out.
Spagnuolo?
Is it Steve Spagnuolo or something like that?
Pretty sure it is.
Yeah, so he reminds me a lot of some of him, you know, someone that can disguise things really well, but when you know it's like third and something and the game's on the line, heat's coming, but he disguises it very well to capitalize on getting pressure on the quarterback to potentially have a big time play.
Right. Yeah.
So
I think that's all fair. And I look at it like this. If you're comparing apples to apples between Christian Parker and Durante Jones, you look at, just to touch on what you said, because it just came to my mind. Yep. Yes, he has bounced around a lot. He's 47 years old, so he's got, you know, 13 more years of experience than the other, or 11, 12 years, however many, of the young man, Christian Parker. But he's stayed in the game.
Yeah.
So even if he did move on, he moved on and he came back. So he had a short stint 1 year as LSU's defensive coordinator, which is the only time he's been in that position. Christian Parker hasn't been a defensive coordinator at all. But, you know, it wasn't the most productive season, but he was able to come back into the league in 2022 and come right back into the NFL and be a coach. And now he's had enough success that he's actually being considered a candidate by multiple teams. And that doesn't happen unless you have the know-how and the ability to go with it. You know, because like I've said before, and you've said, these people in this business, they know what they're doing. They know how to look at players. They know how to look at talent. They know how to draft. They know how to evaluate. So, you know, 100 people aren't going to be wrong about someone's ability to, you know, give information and teach people. So, if you look at it by the eyeball test and you just look at Minnesota's passing game and you look at the defense and then you look at Philadelphia's passing game defense, I personally like the way the Eagles defensive backs play.
Yeah.
A lot better than I think Minnesota's stronger because it's very innovative about how it uses its front five. And I think the Eagles' secondary's defense's strong suit is the way their DBs move around and share responsibility in the backfield back there. So I think that really is, you know, their strength. They have a good defensive line, but man, those DBs get on horses out there and they run everybody down. They rally the ball and they hit really, really hard. So I like that a little bit more than what I see from the Vikings defense. So It's going to be an interesting battle. Right now, I'm still leaning Christian Parker just because I like the youth aspect of it. And I like that he's been, you know, coming up through the ranks really fast.
Yeah, I agree. I guess let's talk about Jim Leonhard, right? He's the last one we got here.
Yep. So let's see. Jim Leonhard. And let's look at this guy. So hiring a play caller with just 2 seasons at the NFL level is a major risk. Leonard's experience at the college level was about as high of a grade as it could be, but the ability to show adaptability over time at the NFL level is a different animal. When opposing offensive coordinators get the first 6-game sample size from his scheme and concepts, they will adjust and attack. Is there evidence that he can react to that accordingly? So that's the question that's kind of been thrown out there on Jim Leonard, who's 43 years old, big at Wisconsin, had some time with the Green Bay Packers, and now he is currently on staff with the Denver Broncos. And this was one of the, standout candidates that came to mind for Dallas. And that's kind of where we're at on him. Went to college at Wisconsin, was undrafted in the NFL, played free safety for Buffalo, Baltimore, New York, Denver, New Orleans, Buffalo again, and then finally was done at Cleveland. Defensive back coach in Wisconsin, interim head coach at Wisconsin, senior football analyst for Illinois, defensive back coach and pass game coordinator in 2024 in Denver. And then this year, he is the assistant head coach and defensive pass game coordinator.
Yeah, and I think the rule of thumb in the NFL, and I've heard this from other people, is usually when they start adding head coaching titles like assistant to the head coach and all that, it's to kind of get you to stay and kind of help and promote you and all that. But
right
when we're talking about Jim Leonard, I like him. I think he is a good potential defensive coordinator guy that can walk in the building. I think he's kind of, like I said earlier, the safest of all the picks. I think he provides that kind of like a security blanket. He's kind of got that.
Why do you feel that way?
I feel that way because of his tenure with, where is it from? Nebraska?
As a coach or as a player?
As a coach.
Okay.
I think his long tenure with Wisconsin, as a defensive coordinator there, and then a little bit of interim head coach provides that experience. And the NFL defensive assistant, I think it's been interesting of the way he's been able to help out Sean Payton in those corners. He kind of provides that same thing we were talking about for Christian Parker and Durante Jones about, being able to elevate DBs to play better.
Sure.
And I look at him as more of maybe a teacher, right? I could see him walking into a room and being able to be like a scheme guru, kind of a guy who can organize things, stay calm under the pressure, and kind of adjust to what's going on. But I don't see that the big high. I don't see the upside with him. I don't see the boom with him, right? I kind of just see like you get a top 20 defense scheme wise, and he's able to, create plays or anything like that. Like I see a lot of base defense coming out of him, right? I don't see anything explosive, anything crazy or like when I look at Durante Jones,
he's just a strong fundamentals coach.
Like strong fundamental kind of guy. That's the vibes I get from reading about him and watching kind of some of the film of when he was at, Wisconsin, and kind of some of, I don't know how much he provides for Denver, obviously, but I can see just a lot of strong fundamentals kind of guy, while Christian Parker and Durante Jones are going to elevate a lot of like boom in the scheme. Like you're going to see like that like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden Reddy Stewart is playing like a Pro Bowler, right? But I see, well, let me put it this way. Dallas struggled with one-word communications is what we got to. Dallas struggled with, trying to dumb things down. I think Leonard makes the complicated things look simple, but call it in a complicated way. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So okay. So let me go through mine real quick.
Yep.
Here's how I've got these 4 guys ranked. I've got Parker, Leonard, Jones, Gannon, right?
Yep.
And Gannon is only, the house is on fire. We've only got one firefighter, and it's Gannon. So we got to put the house.
Not a good firefighter.
Yeah. That's it. That's where we're at. But I like Parker the most. I really like the way the Eagles secondary plays, and I love the fact that he's 30. I know I've said this before. He's 34 years old, and he's moved up through the ranks like that in just some years, a small amount of years. That tells me that he's got something. He's got that it factor, and he's a hot hand, and that is a great thing to develop a defensive culture under. I think it's excellent. Strike when the iron's hot, okay? And the next, Leonard hits all the boxes. Here's why. These are the things that I think are important. You talked about this earlier. Coaching tree, Sean Payton, check.
Yep.
Long tenured at the NCAA level as a coach. Wisconsin, check. Played in the NFL for more than just a year. He played 4 years. He can play the game. Check. A lot of good coaches and some of the best coaches in the league right now are former players, right? So that checks another box. And then everything that we like about Shotty is what this guy does. Good leader of men, great educator, great communicator, and he's a big fundamentals guy. But Slater said it. He hit it right on the head, in my opinion. Does he have the ability to be innovative and take an unpopular approach or a dynamic approach to a defensive coordinator's position? Can he do that? And that's what gives him, to me, that gives Parker just a slight edge over Leonard to me, is because I think Parker is going to bring something innovative to the defensive coordinator position for the Dallas Cowboys with our current, personnel group of defensive backs, where Leonard would provide you some of that, but it's more going to be, this is how we're going to show up and practice and the attitude, and this is our game plan, and we're going to execute it the same way every day. I'm going to make sure you know what you're doing. I'm going to make sure you know what I want, and then we're just going to repeat. And that's kind of how Sean Payton coaches, and that's how he's going to coach. So could he do it? Yes. Would he have as much success as I think Parker would have? Who knows? But I give Parker the edge just because it's my opinion and I can do that. And then as far as Durante Jones, I don't think he's a bad choice. I think it may take him a little bit longer to develop. You're going to have to give him some really good assistant coaches to assist him as a defensive coordinator, and that would make him or break him. But I think he's also capable, and I like what he can deliver for a defensive coordinator. But I just see him third in line behind Parker and Leonard. And then, we've already said how we feel about Gannon.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no need to talk about Gannon. Gannon's like last option. I'm not even want to talk about it because I really don't know.
It's only because he's on the list. That's the only reason I'm talking about it. I'd rather he just not have an option.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I like your list. I agree with your top 4 in that order. I think Jones is kind of like my second choice for the kind of guy I'm looking for, because I think Parker and Jones are very similar.
Sure.
Parker is more of the favorite for that kind of scheme I'm looking for. If I'm looking to be safe, Jim Leonard, right? If I'm looking for someone innovative, start a Schottenheimer coaching tree, I'm bringing Parker in. So
cool.
All right.
That's all I've got.
Yeah, that's all I got too, man. Chat, if there's any comments, questions, we'll kind of open up the floor to you. I do want to show you one more thing, and if they got any comments, we'll kind of answer their questions. If not, we'll wrap this up and get out of here. But let me share this for you real quick. I thought this would be just a good little laugh. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Ha, ha, ha.
The Packers fans wanted him. They said he was all pro, but they didn't want to pay that $15 million contract for next year, did they?
What's your take on this? Is this going to be we're going to re-sign you next year at a different negotiated contract?
Probably.
Do you think they're done?
I think they could probably re-sign him, but they paid $15 million in releasing him today, or not paying him, but they saved $15 million on their cap hit. So obviously you're not going to take a $15 million cap hit next year for Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah.
Not when you can probably release him and bring him back, because he'll probably accept that deal as a free agent, knowing that he's in Green Bay with Micah.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the plan, is you're going to be able to re-sign him for pennies on the dollar just because he wants to play with Parsons.
Yeah.
And he'll be one of those guys that ends up being in the slot every now and then, just to be on the team. But I think his days as a number 1 game-breaking cornerback are well behind him.
Yeah. And just for our viewers out there, if y'all haven't yet, man, we're on X, and, come and follow us. We repost Cowboy stuff. We post our own content on here. And outside of that, man, just if you haven't already yet, please comment, like, subscribe. We appreciate y'all being here. And until next time, the Cowboys Game Plan.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah! Never lose sight of the magic of this football team. Here we go.
I'm all in.